I want to start today with a description. Tell me if this sounds familiar. You know something needs to change and you feel it clearly. It's not a vague sense of restlessness. It's a specific recurring awareness that the life you're living isn't quite the life you're supposed to be living. But when someone asks you what you want instead, or when you ask yourself in the quiet moments, you come up with empty. Because you've been so focused on what everybody else needs for so long that the direct connection to your own inner life has gone quiet. If that's you, today's video is for you because I want to talk about what's actually happening in that moment, why it's not a character flaw, and what the real first move is. Let me tell you what's actually going on when you find yourself in that place. See, your brain has a network called the default mode network. Neuroscientists sometimes call it the identity network. It fires when you're thinking about yourself, about your values, your desires, your sense of who you are. So here's the problem. That network requires practice. When you spend decades primarily focused outward on your career or family responsibilities, your organization, the inner capacity atrophies. Not permanently, but it weakens. And then you arrive at a life transition. The kids are grown, the career's ending or changed, the role that gave your life shape is dissolving, and suddenly the question turns inward. And the machinery for answering it hasn't been used in years. So it's not that you don't have desires, it's that your access to them has been muffled by decades of outward focus. It's not failure, it's actually faithfulness. You showed up for everybody who needed you. The cost was that you put your own inner life on a very long, slow hold. Now it's time to pick it back up. Here's the mistake most people make at this point, and it's completely understandable. They try to think their way to clarity. They make lists, they do personality assessments, they read books about purpose. They have long conversations with their spouse or closest friend. They lie awake at 2 a.m. running scenarios. They pray and they wait for a clear answer to arrive. And none of it's producing the thing they're looking for because clarity is not a thinking problem. It's a design problem. Let me say that again because it's the thing that changes everything when people finally hear it. Clarity doesn't precede design. Clarity emerges from design. You don't figure out what you want and then start building your next chapter. You start building with a structured process, with the right questions, with a guide who has walked this road with hundreds of people, and the clarity begins to surface while you're building. I've watched this happen more times than I can count. A person arrives convinced they don't know what they want, and then they sit with the process. They do the work. And 45 minutes or an hour in, they're writing things down they've known for years, but they never had permission or language to say it. The clarity was always there. The process just gave it a door to walk through. Let's talk about a man I'll call Robert, 61 years old, spent 32 years in healthcare administration, senior leadership, good salary, respected in his field, and he had just announced his retirement. Now, 6 weeks after his last day, his wife said something's wrong with Robert. He's not depressed exactly. He's not in crisis. He just doesn't know what to do with himself. He keeps starting projects and abandoning them. Seems like he's lost. Robert was asked one question. Not, what do you want to do in retirement? Not, what are your hobbies? But what have been the 2 or 3 moments in your career when you felt most alive? Now, he didn't answer immediately. He looked out the window for a long time, and then he said, the moments when I was building something from nothing, when I was in the middle of a problem that nobody had solved yet, and I was figuring it out. Those were the times I felt most alive. And then he was asked, when did that last happen? And he said, 12 years ago. 12 years of administration, 12 years of managing something that was already solved, 12 years of competence without feeling alive. He then spent the next several hours working through a structured process. By the end of it, Robert had written a design for the next chapter of his life. It involved consulting with a small healthcare organization that couldn't afford a full-time executive. It involved building again from nothing, which is exactly what made him feel most alive. But it had been 12 years. He wasn't unclear about what he wanted. He just hadn't been given the permission or asked the questions to surface it. He hadn't had a process to do that. So what is the process? The process I use is called the Dream Framework. 5 elements. Each one surfaces a different dimension of who you actually are in this season. D is for desire. Not the vague sense that something needs to change, but the specific, named, permission-granted desires that have been sitting just underneath the surface of your responsible life. So in this process, we surface them, name them, and hold them. R is for resilience. What you've survived is not just pain, it's a map. The hardest seasons of your life reveal what you care about most. We excavate that map together. E is for experiences. The accumulated wisdom, perspective, capability you've built for decades. Most people have been giving this away for free without realizing the extraordinary value of what they carry. A is for ability. The God-given gifts that existed before your last role, and they exist now. The things you do effortlessly that others experience as extraordinary, and we'll name those precisely. M is for meaning. What genuinely is valuable to you now? Not what was valuable 20 years ago, what holds meaning in this season? And what would make the years ahead feel genuinely lived? When you work through all 5 of those elements with a guide, not alone, not through a quiz, but in a structured process, you leave with a written document, a dream design, a tangible next chapter plan that's entirely yours. On June 27th, Karen and I are opening our Southern California home to a small group of men and women who are ready to stop running through the scenarios in their head and actually do the work. 10 to 12 people, that's it. 1 full day, the complete dream process, guided by me and Karen together. You'll leave with your written dream design, a clear picture of who you are in this season, a named set of desires you hold without guilt, a path forward aligned with your values, your faith, and your God-given abilities. Not fluff, but a document, a design, a next chapter you built on purpose in one day. If today's video described where you are, the link to the retreat page is in the description. Read what the day looks like, and if it's right for you, reserve your spot. 12 people, that's it, and when it's full, it's full. If you're not ready for a retreat, please go ahead and subscribe to this channel. I post new content 3 times a week for people standing at exactly this crossroads. So I'll see you next time.